Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everybody, and welcome once again to Full Fat Spoiler Chat, the show in which we, the folks at Nerd Caliber, talk in depth about a recent piece of entertainment, nerdy entertainment, that has dropped usually sometime in the last few weeks, and we look at it in an analytical way. So we talk about what was good about it, what was bad about it, what worked, what didn't work, and then we get into bigger picture stuff. So we talk about theme and tone and message, which means that we have to talk about all aspects of the show, movie, or whatever it happens to be, and that means we're going to be spoiling it. That's why all this is up here, and that's why the name is Spoiler Chat. So what are we going to be talking about this week? It is the Disney Pixar movie Turning Red, which hit both theaters and streaming on March 11th. So it's been out almost a month now. And before we get into that, I'm going to say right out of the gate that I am going to apologize to everybody that does wind up either in the live chat or watching this later on, that I could not get any woman on our team on the show tonight. Everybody's busy. Everybody's got stuff going on. And for this particular movie and its topics, its themes, the messages coming out of it, that's a shame. So I again apologize right up front that you're getting a 60 plus year old redneck white guy talking about a movie about a 13-year-old Chinese Canadian with the least subtle metaphor about puberty I've ever seen. So with that said, we are going to be talking about Turning Red, or I will be talking about Turning Red. Before we get into it, let me start with our Twitch promo. This URL on your screen right now is, of course, our Twitch URL, twitch.tv/nerdcaliber. If you have a Twitch account, we'd love to have you go there and consider giving us a follow. We're trying to build our following on there to the extent that we have really solid representation on Facebook Live and YouTube and so on. So, twitch.tv/nerdcaliber. And feel free to go there, watch us there, comment on what we're doing, offer your opinion about Turning Red, or my opinion on Turning Red, or your opinion on, why a guy like me is talking about Turning Red. Andrew Casale, welcome to the show. Brody, welcome to the show. Once again, and it's pretty clear in the title, but we're spoiling the movie Turning Red, which means we're going to be talking about it in detail, and that has to be accompanied by spoilers. So there's the warning. It's all over here and down here and so on. So if you have seen Turning Red, great. Or if you don't mind spoilers, great. But if you haven't and you do not like spoilers, you should probably watch that before you come back to this. Just, again, giving you that fair warning. All right, so what is Turning Red? Turning Red is the animated film from Pixar made by Domi Shi, who won the Academy Award for Best Short Animated Film for the Pixar short Bao, which is amazing if you haven't seen it. And you can see that in the art design style and the animation style of this as well. It definitely has a similar aesthetic. It's very sort of soft, cartoony, almost rubbery looking sort of cartoon work. The story is about Mei Lin Lee, the character you're looking at here, a 13-year-old Chinese Canadian girl living in Toronto, and she is an overachiever. She is absolutely straight A student, an amazing musician. She's a flautist. She is always working on various civic or general save the world type projects. And she manages to do all that while going home every day to help out with her family's traditional temple, which is also a sort of a tourist attraction, it's mainly a tourist attraction, in Chinatown. and they keep saying that it's the oldest temple in Toronto, and it's an ancestor veneration temple, not a Buddhist temple. And she enjoys that too. She really loves working with her mother. She makes it very clear that she feels the both the sense of responsibility and the joy of doing things as a dutiful child. However, she also is a 13-year-old middle school student and has pretty normal friends who are very important to the story. Left to right, Miriam, Abby, and Priya, and she is very much a normal 13-year-old girl. This is set in 2002, and you can go back to I'll go back to the picture of May. She's got a Tamagotchi, that she carries around, which she names Robert Jr., which after one of the singers, the African-American singer, or actually it's a black singer, I don't know if they're Canadian or not, of a boy band that she and her friends are all absolutely smitten with called Four Town. And his name is Robert. So her Tamagotchi is Robert Jr. And so she has a fairly normal 13-year-old childhood from the early 2000s. And her mother doesn't know a whole lot about it. I mean, she knows she has school friends that almost never come over, and that's fine by her because she doesn't particularly care for her school friends. The mother is... so May is kind of presented initially as a bit of a stereotypical overachieving Asian student, dutiful child, etc. And her mother, Ming, is portrayed as also a bit of a stereotypical overbearing tiger mom. Dream, welcome to the show. In Dream, we're spoiling Turning Red. If you haven't seen it, you might not want to hang around unless you don't mind spoilers. So one of the ways the show, I think, gets... Well, before I get into that, let's finish out what the show is about. May discovers... I mean, she's always been sort of fascinated by boys, particularly, this group Four Town, but it's more of a dreamy, guys up on stage kind of fascination, like she and all of her friends experience. She discovers she's very interested in a different way, a high school boy who works as a clerk at the local convenience store. Her mother discovers some drawings she made of him, embarrasses her terribly, and it's in those heightened emotions later on, and she's really just freaking out at home in her bedroom, where she discovers that she turns into a giant red panda. And when I say giant red panda, I mean pretty giant. Let me get a good shot of the... So this is her size when she turns into a red panda. Based on the height of the rooms, her room, the bathroom, so on, I'm thinking she's close to 7 or 8 feet tall. So they play around with that a little bit, but it's usually pretty consistent. So she is big. And the rest of the movie is about the effects of that, her dealing with that, the effects on her friends, on her family, secrets about her family that come out, and ultimately a big, very exciting resolution at the end. So that's a general structure of the story. One of the things, so what did I like about it? I've already mentioned, I think the art style is really cool. The animation is amazing. It's very fluid. The character expressions are absolutely fantastic. The acting is very good, and most of the young actors are unknowns, or relatively unknowns. Rosalie Chang as May has almost nothing. She has a couple of other shorts in her resume on IMDb, but almost nothing prior to Turning Red. And that's pretty much true for all of the actors who portray her various friends. And they all do an excellent job. They're all fantastic. Sandra Oh is marvelous as her mom Ming, and I think the writing of this is very good, and I'll get into that as well. So her character, while at first seeming to be sort of a stereotypical tiger mom, isn't really. I mean, there's that aspect of her, and they don't deny it. It's definitely there, but she's also a lot more complicated than that, and that's good writing. Um, but Sandra Oh, also who plays Ming, just brings everything that she has to making this character both believable as a kind of tiger mom, and also a very understandable parent who's deeply, deeply concerned about her daughter, not only as just a regular mother-daughter relationship, but because she knows that this transformation thing is something that happens to every woman in the direct line of their family, include her grandmother, all the way going back to the ancestor that is in the wall scroll in the main shrine part of the temple. And so the fact that she's keeping this secret makes the character very complex. When it comes out, how she deals with it is wonderful. It's all done really well, very smart. Nobody else in the cast is anybody that you've probably ever heard of, with the one exception of there's an elderly priest type who helps them deal with with the panda spirit that is part of May, and again has been part of all of the female ancestors in her line, Mr. Gao. And the minute he appears and says something, it's James Hong. It's like, okay, it's James Hong. That's wonderful. 92 years old, and he's still, he's doing this voiceover, but he's also doing live action work in Everything Everywhere All at Once. So, yay, James Hong. And the only other person that I recognized, and this is only because I actually went to the IMDb listings and started looking at the various actors, and as soon as I saw her picture, Wai Ching Ho, I went, that was Madame Gao from Iron Fist, Daredevil, The Defenders, all of those wonderful Netflix movies or series. And I was like, I know that actress. So she's fantastic as well. Everybody is in this. So the voice acting is absolutely fantastic. The writing is really good. It's funny in a situational sense. But they don't make fun of these girls and their obsession, say, with this, boy band called Four Town. Although they do make fun of the band a little bit. Not as bad as in the live action Josie and the Pussycats, where they really raked over Du Jour, that band. But in this case, like, they make her mother makes the joke, it's like, why are they Four Town? There are 5 of them. Nobody has an answer. In the commercial, one of the commercials for the band, the one where she makes this comment, they highlight 3 of the band members, really, in a big way, and then sitting in the background at like a diner seating type bench and table, and says, and also blah 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 and blah blah blah, and they just kind of wave, like, yep, that's every boy band or every band like this. There's the really popular ones, and then the other folks. So the humor is very good, but it also has an awful lot of drama that isn't melodramatic. I mean, there's some very exciting scenes. It's the last act, the third act, is pretty much just loaded with action, but not like over the top melodrama. There isn't. There's absolutely 100% conflict between May and her mother. No question about that, and that's it's telegraphed right at the beginning. There's no way that anybody in a modern day can be that absolutely, and I hate to use the word, but slavishly devoted to doing absolutely the right thing for their parent, and not start resenting it when it gets in the way of their desire to be a normal 13-year-old. The other thing that I really like about it is the fact that it is, again, it is the least subtle, as I've said, presentation of puberty for anybody, but particularly for young women. So, and Domi Shi has said this in interviews before, that she wanted this transformation to look like what she felt like going through puberty. Huge, hairy. One of the things about red pandas is they have musk glands, so they smell, and they make that a point in here. So huge, hairy, stinky, loud, and emotional. This transformation happens when May gets very emotional, and it is sort of amplified, because she's in the stage that happened because she's emotional. She gets angry easier. She cries easier. Like I said, this isn't subtle. This is one of the least subtle metaphors. Like, puberty hits. Here, you're a giant hairy creature that's loud and emotional and, smells bad. And it's just, so not subtle, but handled so well. And honestly, boys go through this to some extent as well, but it's not as dramatic or traumatic as it can be for women, of course. And another thing I really like about this is that they absolutely lean into that and know they don't tiptoe around it. When the transformation first happens, when finally May sees what happens and starts screaming, and her mother comes running in, and May just says, I'm not feeling well, don't come in. And she's in the bathroom at this point. Says, don't come in. And her mother immediately goes, oh no, and apparently their slang was, did the red peony visit? Meaning she get her period. And May decides that that's better to say than what really happened, so she says yes. And her mother says, I'll come right back with everything that I can get to help you out. And then May hides in the bathroom, pulls the curtain, or the shower, pulls the curtain to make sure that her mother doesn't see her when she comes bursting in, because she knows she's gonna. And she comes in with Excedrin and ibuprofen and this stack of feminine products, and starts laying them out on the counter, and a hot water bottle, as you can see there, and then starts laying them out and says, light days, heavy days, all of the, and no hesitation on presenting it in a Pixar movie for kids, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And I'm going to do a little bit of an aside here, because I've seen an awful lot of people, including the creators of this, talk about how they were really surprised that they were allowed to get away with this blunt a depiction of essentially menarche, of having your period, or first having your period, which is not the case, as it turns out, for May. And I was shocked at that. It's like, why would that be shocking? And then I realized that, so I grew up in the 1970s, before cable, before the niche diaspora of, cable channels focused on a specific demographic and advertising moving to those specific demographics. So when we had the three channels that were, the three major broadcast networks, the local affiliates, one of the kind of surprising immediate offshoots of the first wave feminism of the late 60s and early 70s was that television started showing commercials for feminine hygiene products all the time. And I don't mean pads, but tampons and My Doll. Anybody remember My Doll? And douche products all over TV. So by the time I was May's age, by the time I was 13, I probably knew more about feminine hygiene than I did about hygiene for my own private areas. That was just common back then. So to have so much statement, even in the media, about how surprising it is that Pixar let you guys do this and Disney let you guys present this, I at first was just flabbergasted. It's like, what's the big deal? And then I realized that over the last 20 years, TV has become such a balkanized, fractured landscape that a lot of people probably haven't seen these types of commercials every single day, which is what I did growing up. So yeah, I guess it could be surprising to younger writers, younger reporters, even to the director and co-writer Domi Shi herself, who said that she was quite surprised that Pixar was absolutely fine with doing this. So the first act is basically takes you from the point of introducing May and her family situation and all of her friends, her obsession with Four Town, her growing awareness of of her own interest in boys, and turning into the panda. The second act is mostly about her coming to terms with the fact that this is probably or could be how she is for the rest of her life. She gets it under control pretty significantly. Her parents, to determine whether or not she's okay to go to school, her parents run a test of whether or not she can keep it under control. And they show all sorts of shocking or embarrassing things to her. And ultimately, the last test is the mother comes out with a big box and opens it up, and it's a box of kittens. And she just almost loses it. But she's discovered that her love of her friends is something that she can keep in her mind, and even in the most potentially deeply emotional moments, that calms her. And she makes a mistake of saying, her mother asks her, how did you keep it in? So I just think of the people I love the most. And then her mother goes, and then she immediately lies and says, about you two, of course, meaning her parents. Which is, again, another just a wonderful, nice, subtle touch about this, about how much more important her friends are to her at that stage in her life. So that's mostly the third act. And ultimately, by the end of the third act, we realize that May has come to the point where she's pretty comfortable with this. And so when it's revealed that everybody in her family, over the course of the third act, it's revealed that everybody in her family, all the women have had this. Her mother has had it sealed away. And all of the women in her family, as it turns out, have had their spirits sealed away in a piece of jewelry or an accessory of some sort. So, so they go to do this with May, and she decides ultimately that she doesn't want to have it sealed away. And that's a wonderful message to take out of this. We'll be getting into that later on when we talk specifically about message. But the third act is about her, now that she's accepted it, rebelling more against her parents, and then the big conflict between her and her mother and her grandmother, because her grandmother actually sees video footage of May running around Toronto as a panda while she's living in her retirement in Florida, and says that I'm coming back, and so then the relationship between Ming, May's mother, and her mother, May's grandmother, becomes a very important thing. Ultimately, May rebels by going to this concert that she was told she couldn't go to, the Four Town boy band. And we see the transformation of her mother and her grandmother and all of her aunts who've come up to help as well, ultimately. And it's a wonderful big set piece, action piece at the concert at the Toronto Superdome, I guess, or whatever it's called. And it's fantastic. It's really well done. It has some pretty, I wouldn't say scary, but if you had little kids, there's some moments where they might look at some of the things, particularly May's mom, who was really ticked off as a giant panda. And May's mom is a giant panda. I mean, we're talking, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. And, there are moments where little kids might get pretty scared at that. But it doesn't lean too heavily into it to make it, have horror aspects for anybody other than little kids that might be frightened. So you don't have to worry about that. But it is very exciting. And it ultimately has a great resolution that continues the idea that May is going to accept this new version of herself where she can turn into a giant panda, and that's really just part of who she is. It is a part of her that she is a giant, hairy, loud, emotional being. There isn't much I don't like about it. Getting into the don't likes. It didn't lag. I'm not a big fan of the general concept or the style of boy band music. But there were 3 original songs written for Town by Billie Eilish and Phineas O'Connell. And they're actually really good, and they're really in the style of early 2000s boy bands. They nailed it 100%. And Phineas actually portrays one of the members of the boy band and does his singing. And the others are all, they're all, I guess, young, well-known, or relatively well-known singers. I don't know who any of those people are. So, I couldn't say for sure. Ivan, welcome to the chat. Sorry I missed you over there on Facebook. So let's go back to a couple of the comments you made here a little while ago. About James Hong, who will always be David Lopan to me. True. That's excellent. Compared to other animated lampoons of boy bands, Gravity Falls, Bob Burgers, they were very respectful, except to Aaron too. Yeah, that is true. And yes, it's pretty easy to dump on boy bands. There have been other things where they've been very respectful of them. What was it? This Is the End? Was that the one? That like every comedian of the 2010s in it, Seth Rogen, etc. And it ultimately ends with them going to heaven and seeing In Sync, and that was so cool. Ivan says, you just know Granny's scars came from Mom's red panda. That is true. They telegraph that, but it is a good reveal when it does happen. Ivan says, I would have said Daikaiju, but sure, Marshmallow Man. Daikaiju. You have to, obviously it's a kaiju, but you'll have to let me know who that is and what that's from. I don't get the reference. So Ivan, let me know, was there anything that you didn't care for about this? I can't think of anything off the top of my head. It was really well done. It wasn't too, it was an hour and 47 minutes. It wasn't too long. It didn't lag at all. I guess the only thing I can say is something that actually didn't happen. And that I think there was supposed to be at least the implication of a deeper feeling between May and her friend Miriam, which is the one with the braces in the photo of the 3 friends that I showed. Because there was a song that was supposed to be sort of a big arena rock ballad type thing about love that initially was supposed to be sung It was a four-town song, but in the movie it was supposed to be sung between, back and forth, by Miriam and May. And apparently they changed that. Now, I don't know if this is part of why Pixar was complaining about Disney changing, either explicit or implicit LGBTQ plus situations within their movies or not. Ivan, Westerners use kaiju as a word for giant monsters, but it really means strange monster. Daikaiju means giant monster. Okay, giant strange monster. All right, I get it. Yeah, I mean, technically, yes, it is a kaiju. That's true. I was just trying to go for a reference for somebody who could get a particular sense of scale. Because if you say kaiju, you could also be talking about Godzilla. Well, actually, I don't know. It's pretty close to the size of early Godzilla. But anyway, so there isn't really anything I don't like about it. I wish I had something to put into this section, but I don't. So themes and tones and messages. So the tone is pretty light, even though it deals with some pretty weighty topics. Familial obligation, a sense of duty, overbearing parenting, teenage rebellion, and of course, the big one, puberty. It is still relatively light in tone and deals with them all in a very wonderfully realistic way for a movie that is essentially a fantasy movie. Or I guess I should say it's more magical realism. I think that's it. This is actually a magical realism tale. The themes coming out of this and the message, particularly the one message is absolutely abundant, and again, not subtle at all. Accept who you are. Accept the changes that you're going through. Accept, the person that you are becoming, so that you can be the best version of that person going forward. And that's a incredibly uplifting and wonderful message. Ivan says, as 13-year-olds, they have crushes, and those crushes are not necessarily bound by genders or gender roles. I thought it was great that they did not emphasize overly the relationships outside of the merman art. That's true. And even then, I don't know if that would have been particularly overly emphasized. It was one scene that I read in this Vanity Fair article that said that it had been cut out. And that music was reutilized at different points in the movie. And from what I understand, it's clear that May obviously has feelings for boys, and as do all of the other girls in her friendship group. They sneak up on the convenience store so they can stare at Devon, the 17-year-old high school boy working there, who's wearing the bucket hat from 2002, which I forgot that they said that this takes place in 2002, and so this isn't, I guess, like 10 minutes into the movie when this happens, and I'm like, why the hell is he here wearing one of the... It's like, oh yeah, all right, this is 20 years ago. So yeah, the message here is about acceptance of yourself. It's also about being honest with yourself and, as far as your feelings go, with those people who are important to you. May and her mother and her grandmother, but also May and her friends at one point. All right, I guess that's one of the... If there's a knock I can give to this, it's that the point at which May kind of turns her back on her friends, is pretty tropey. It's not done in any particularly innovative way, whereas so much more of this is. And so I guess that's one knock, and even then, that's just that's a nitpick, frankly. It's definitely about communication and about being honest with those people who are important to you. But the big hammer you in the head with it message is accept yourself. Accept the person you are becoming, accept the changes that happen to you, and learn to embrace them and be that person. And that's great. And if that message gets to Ivan says it was maybe too bright and cheery for me. Not a complaint, since I know I'm not the target audience, but I really did enjoy everything in the movie. They even refused to vilify Tyler when they got the chance, which I was expecting, but instead, 4 townies for life. Yeah, that was really a nice touch that ultimately they found out that Tyler, this is a boy Tyler who not kind of blackmails May into appearing at his birthday party as the Red Panda. And he is clearly a jerk. He is a demanding little snot while he's at the party, working her to the bone with appearances and rides, giving people rides on her back and so on. But they kind of forgive him when at the concert they see him there and they realize that he is another Four Townie, a devotee of the band Four Town. And that kind of redeems him a little bit in both the eyes of the audience and certainly in the eyes of May and her friends. So yeah, that's a nice touch. And yeah, you're right. It is a very uplifting story. Ultimately, it is bright. It is cheerful. The color palette of it is just incredibly bright. And I didn't mind that. After watching the Batman a couple of weeks ago, God, give me something with color in my life, please. And I didn't dislike the Batman, but damn, that was dark. Like literally visually dark, and dark, but no. Anyway, so that's pretty much it. That wraps up our coverage here of Turning Red. Would I recommend it? Absolutely. To anybody, any age, maybe not really little kids. There might be some moments at the end with May's mom that they could find out or could view as scary. But to everybody else, whatever, yes, it's the story of a 13-year-old girl discovering the problems of puberty through the magical realism tale of turning into a giant red panda. But everybody goes through, well, not everybody, but pretty much everybody goes through puberty. Everybody goes through some sort of change, even if it's, after puberty, if you're going through a transition, this is a great movie about acceptance. Ivan, I'm now assuming that if I ever visit Toronto, I'll have to wear sunglasses. Or you could just, view Toronto from the lens of Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and then you won't ever have to wear sunglasses, except if you go out in the day when it's in winter and there's snow everywhere. So yeah, would I recommend it? 100% to anybody. Go watch it. Out of 10, I'm gonna give it an 8. I can't think of anything that would knock it down lower than that. It's not a 9 or a 10. It's not perfect. And it is a little lightweight, but it's also more complex than I thought it would be. And particularly the character writing and the character performances are wonderfully complex for such a light tale. So yeah, 8 out of 10. All right, folks, that's it. We'll quickly throw out our Patreon bag, patreon.com/nerdcaliber. Please go there, take a look at it. If you want to be a patron, we'd love to have you. We'll take that money and go to cons, which I'll talk about what we're doing at cons coming up. And Ivan knows what I'm saying. Thank you, Ivan. About cons. But upcoming shows. So next Monday will be No Nerd Caliber, and we'll be talking about our top 3 favorite Disney reboots. The reason we're doing that is that next Full Fat Spoiler Chat show, next Thursday, is going to be the Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers movie done by the guys at Lonely Island. So Andy Samberg and et cetera, with also the voice of John Mulaney and so on. A lot of people looked at that and just went, oh my God, that's horrible. Can't wait to watch it. I think it looks great. So that's going to be our Full Fat Spoiler Chat next Thursday. I'll find out whether it holds up for me or not. And, of course, next Tuesday we have our Nerd Week Live Nerd News Show. So this Saturday, we will be at Wicked Comic-Con in Boston at the Westin Waterfront in South Boston. We will have, I think our number is 223 3. It's in what they call the Cause Hall or Cause Hallway or something like that. It's the main hallway that runs in front of the ballroom on the lower level of the Westin. The one that opens right out onto D Street and all the way at the end, which is where we'll be, opens right out onto the lawn on D. So you'll see us there. We'll have our studio set up and come by, get pictures. We'll be right next to Red Raven Studio, which will have I don't know what they're bringing, but it'll be something amazing, I'm sure. So, swing by and talk to Greg, who will be working for them, not for us, because Greg and Christian are partners in that thing. But yeah, get photos from all of us. Ivan, I'm really looking forward to hating that movie. I believe you're talking about the Chippendale, but I've also been jonesing for a Roger Rabbit follow-up since the 1980s, so I will still watch it and try to appreciate what it is, not hate what it isn't. Yeah. We'll talk about that at the upcoming show, because I don't want to get into Roger Rabbit comparisons until I've seen it. But yeah, I get your point. So, and then of course, the 21st through the 24th of April, we'll be at PAX East. We will have our cosplay and photography shootout panel Saturday, 7:30 in Arachnid Theater. So please come watch that or participate if you are a cosplayer and or photographer who wants to be in it. I think we're probably going to be capping the number of participants as we've had to, because otherwise it just takes way too long. So show up early so you can sign up early. And then at the end of May, we'll be at Anime Boston because I will be running the photo department. So you will find me, Greg, and other members of Nerd Caliber working for Anime Boston and for us, of course, in the photo suite, room 102. So come there, get your free cosplay photos, which will go up on Nerd Caliber and Anime Boston's website. And if you are in the masquerade, that is, of course, as you know, where you get your masquerade photos. So we will also have the masquerade studio in there. So we'll see you at one of those upcoming cons and others going forward. Please, in the interim, stay safe, folks. Good night and bye-bye.